Hi guys, today we're going to talk about academic CVs. I'm on my final year of a PhD and it's a high time to think about what to do next. The first step to securing your dream job is getting your CV right, and academic CVs can be tricky. Today I have invited a special guest and my dear friend Irina. She is doing her postdoc at the University of Birmingham. Today we are going to give you some tricks and tips about writing a perfect academic CV using our CVs as an example. So, Irina, can you please tell me a little bit more about your research and about your job hunting?
Sure. I'm a health economist by training, and in short, what we do is we answer all sorts of questions about how to allocate scarce resources within a society to achieve the most health for the population. I've been in academia for a bit over 5 years now. After graduating from a master's degree, I got a job at the university as a junior researcher, and I was very lucky that I was able to obtain my PhD on the back of my job as a researcher. I've been here in Birmingham for nearly 2 years now as a postdoc. So I have applied for quite a few jobs in the past 5 years, including quite a lot of academic jobs. And I have been quite fortunate with most applications resulting at least an interview or an offer. So hopefully I will be able to share some experiences and help you guys in developing your own academic CV to help you secure your dream job in academia.
So the next question for me is, where we're looking for jobs? Is there any specific website, or we're trying to use social media to get your offer, to get in touch with academics who can give you the position?
Well, I don't think there's one size fits all in this case, and it's very much country dependent. So for example, if you're based in the Netherlands, there is a special website where all academic positions are being posted, so it's quite convenient. And I believe there is a similar website in the UK as well.
Yes, actually there is one in the United Kingdom which most people use. It's not only for academics but for all of the position. You can adjust your search and look only for the positions for academics on this website. It's called jobs.ac.uk, so you can check it out.
Besides that, there are quite a few jobs posted via ResearchGate, so it's a really good idea for you as an academic to get an account on ResearchGate if you haven't done so already. Another useful source is Twitter. This is actually how I found my job as a postdoc. At least in the past 5 years, it has been very handy, and most employers do use Twitter and their network on Twitter to advertise positions in their field. So it's definitely a good idea to get an account. Of course, another source is the university websites themselves. That's where the academic jobs are usually being posted. So if you do have specific universities or research groups in mind, it's a good idea to regularly check their job listings to see what is available. And I believe most universities also have this function that you can actually subscribe to updates and get daily or weekly updates if there is anything relevant coming up.
So did you apply only for jobs in academia, or did you apply also for jobs in industry? Because as far as I know, there are two different types of CV, one for academia and another one for industry, and they are quite different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're absolutely right. They are quite different. And I have applied for jobs both in academia and industry. CVs for industry jobs are way more traditional. And I would say that most people who have ever searched for jobs would be familiar with the industry type of CV. So those typically tend to be 1 to 2 pages maximum, very concise, and you really have to pick out the most relevant experiences that are relevant for the particular position that you're applying for in the industry. I guess the main difference between CV for industry and for academia is the length. So I think it's quite good practice in academia to have your CV as lengthy as possible. And you can see it as basically your portfolio, highlighting everything that you have done so far as an academic. And to be completely frank, I think people with academic experience will agree with me that to be successful in academia, you have to excel in a lot of different things. and your CV is basically there to highlight your experiences across the wide range of areas.
And I also found like a table of all of the sections that's supposed to be in academic CV and in CV for industry, so I can just read out loud all of the sections, and yeah, you can give me your opinion if you agree or disagree. Maybe there is something else that we need to add. So the CV for academia is supposed to have the following sections: your name, your personal details, education, research experience, relevant research skills, publications, conference presentations, teaching experience, academic administration, funding and awards, and membership. And CV for industry is supposed to have your name, personal details, personal profile, relevant experience, education, additional skills, professional memberships, other activities and responsibilities.
Well, I think it sounds about right, and there are certainly some sections that could be added or taken out depending on the job. For example, for the industry type jobs, I'm not sure about the relevance of professional memberships, so that's very relevant to the job that you're applying for, then definitely put it in. But for academic CVs as well, I think it sounds about right. I think there can be a couple of sections that could be added or removed depending on your experience and also on the type of job that you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a more teaching-based role, then obviously your teaching experience has to take up most part of your CV. Whereas if you're applying for research position, then your research experience has to get much more space in your CV.
We talked about everything that we should add into the CV, but can you give advice to people what they shouldn't include in their CV?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things to consider. So obviously something that is not relevant at all should not be included. So for example, you've done some summer job 10 years ago, probably you should not put it in unless it helped you develop some very relevant skills for that particular job. Besides that, I think there is a debate about sort of putting your hobbies on your CV, and I would generally advise against that unless this is something that's really sort of highlighting who you are as a person, which is again relevant to the job.
So it's supposed to be very coherent, and if for example you're applying for a leadership position and you had experience in like coaching like kids in the high school, something like this, maybe you can add this. But if you're just a football fan, yeah, it's not really something that you have to put into your CV.
Yeah, so I would say the rule of thumb is that whatever you put in has to be relevant. If it's not relevant, don't include it.
And what about date of birth and photo and your gender and other stuff like that?
Yes, so that's a very good question actually. I think what we often deal with when applying for jobs is some sort of bias and discrimination. And we have to be honest about this. It does exist. And there are many different ways how subconscious biases can affect your chances of getting a job. And I think when it comes to your CV, it's very important to think about what information you include and how this information can affect your chances of getting the job. So generally, I would advise against putting your photo on your CV. And for example, in the Netherlands, it's quite common to include your photo on your CV. And I remember getting that advice from career counselors and recruiters, but I still decided to go against that, and it did not affect my outcomes, or at least I don't think it did. And normally you would still include the link to your LinkedIn profile or your profile on the university website, so people would still be able to see your photo.
Thank you very much, Rina, for your great perspective and all of the advice. And now I think we need to go to another section of our video. I will give my own CVs, and you, Irina, as a more advanced and more experienced academic, you can give me advice. What can I do better, or what shall I include or not include in my CV? So let's start with my PhD CV, which I've made about 4 years ago for my current PhD position. But let's keep in mind that I got my PhD position and I got my scholarship as well. So maybe it's not the best, but I would love to hear your opinion.
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is the section on objective. This is not something I've actually ever seen before. Profile section, I think, is more common, and I think it's particularly common for CVs when you're applying for industry job. And if you do want to include an objective in your CV, I would maybe recommend combining the two in one. So you have this one piece of text at the top.
So next I have a skills summary where I included computer languages and interests parts.
Yes, so this is definitely a section that you need to, or you should include. I would probably put this section towards the end of your CV. Now, looking at the specific skills, I think depending on your fields, you know best which skills are relevant. So for example, you mentioned a number of computer skills. I might maybe use a slightly different heading here. For example, in our field, it's quite common to include statistical software that we are proficient in, such as Stata or R, and then you might consider having a separate section on that. Languages are definitely important. One tip here as well is to maybe link your language level to the standard framework, so when it goes from A, B to C. Now, when it comes to interests, general interest is not something I would recommend including on your CV, again, unless it's very relevant. So for example, things like microbiology, I would already expect you to be interested in microbiology because you are a microbiologist, so it's a little bit redundant. And things like learning Python, for example, this is something you can put in your computer skills and just indicate the level where you are at the moment. Yoga, I don't think that's something that's very relevant to your PhD position. And finally, you also mentioned your YouTube blog, which in this case can be quite relevant to your position because your blog is about academia, is about microbiology, and you can put it perhaps in a different section of your CV under other experience, maybe impact, engagement.
And now when I'm looking at my CV now, I can definitely say that this computer section in skills summary was absolutely not relevant to the PhD project I was applying for, because it needed like microbiology and molecular biology techniques, and I haven't mentioned them at all in my skills summary. The next session is education.
Well, essentially, education and working experience are the two most important sections in your CV. And depending on, I think, where you are in your career, you might think of which one should come first. So for example, if you have quite a lot of work experience already, and if you're applying for a more advanced position, you should probably lead with the section on working experience. Whereas if you're straight out of university, straight out of your master's or your bachelor's, applying for a PhD position, probably the section on education should come first.
And the next session, job experience. And I worked in 3 different companies before I started my PhD project, and I mentioned 2 of them. For another one I worked like 2 months, didn't like it and quit, but I didn't mention that in my CV. And I also worked as a research technician back in Russia, so I put all of this underneath job experience section. Yeah, so what do you think about it?
Well, I think research positions they also count as work experience, so I would definitely include both, and I think it's fine listing them both types of positions under working experience. And generally speaking, I think it looks fine. I think some things to look out for in this case is well, I guess sort of the more senior you are, the more apparent it is. If you have any career gaps, quite lengthy career gaps, that's maybe something that you should mention. For example, if you're on maternity or paternity leave. Another thing that I've learned about CVs and cover letters, so for example, here you have different positions that you held in the past, and you also list under each position what you did. So here it's quite important to use active verbs and try to be very specific about what your responsibilities were, what your achievements were. So for example, if you have optimized something or you developed something, contributed to something. So be very clear and highlight as much as possible what your contribution was.
And also, actually, when I just moved to the United Kingdom, I obviously couldn't find microbiology job straight away, so I worked in Greg's. It's like Starbucks. So I was ashamed to put this inside my CV because I didn't like it, I didn't enjoy it. It was very basic, low salary job. So would it be better to have a gap instead of position in McDonald's?
Well, I think when we talk about early career CV, I think gaps are not very important. Especially if you're applying for a PhD position or maybe a postdoc position right after your PhD, you know, gaps a few years ago, I think they don't matter so much. That's becoming more and more important the more you go forward. And for example, if you take some time off or you take a career break, then it can lead to some questions from hiring managers or recruiters. But I think in this case, I don't think there is an issue. I think it's just something to be aware of regardless of where you're applying.
So the next session is much more relevant to a PhD position than Greg's. It's a conferences section, and I didn't put all of the conferences I have attended and I presented for. I included only the bigger ones and the ones where I got diplomas or where I was awarded something. But in my profile, I mentioned that I've been to more than 15 conferences, but here I mentioned only like 6 of them. Did you do the correct thing? How do you think?
I think attending conferences on its own might not necessarily be something that you want to put on your CV, but if you did present at the conference, that's something that should be included, even if you didn't get a diploma or a certificate.
So the other section is activities. And here I put all of the things that I did in my university in Russia. So I assisted in organization for a conference and another thing that I did. I organized some extracurricular science engaging activities for school students. What do you think about this section?
I would maybe have a bit more specific title for this section first of all, because anything can be listed as an activity. So I think in this case it's more about organizing events, and you can think of a title that represents this the best in terms of maybe engagement or impact. And I would also be more clear about how you assisted and how you helped, what exactly your role was. To highlight the skills that you were able to develop as a result of being involved in this activity. You could have also listed this as extracurricular activities. I remember having that section in my CV. I think I have renamed it into something else now. But yeah, this is definitely something that should be included. If you organized any workshop, any events, if you helped organize a conference, if you led something, maybe a discussion group, if you organized a seminar, all of those things actually, you know, they do count, they do matter. And one important tip that was given to me as well is just to record everything and write it down. Just have a Word document where you write everything down that you did. That's
actually very good advice. I also have the same folder. I use Obsidian for this kind of stuff, and actually I can show it to you. It's much more complicated than having a Word document, but I can put in one folder all of the files that I have, like certificates, the proceedings that I wrote, anything at all, and then I can create a document in which I can make hyperlinks and connect it all, but it will be much more visible. Yeah, so this is how my list of achievements looks like. This is for the year 2022. I have abstract published. This is online version, certificate and poster. This is a link to the website with all of the abstracts, and then I downloaded it as a PDF, and it's also inside this app, inside the folder I have created.
Oh wow, this is very organized actually. I'm just doing a very old-fashioned Word document and just have sections under conference presentations, publications, I don't know, peer review activities, whatever, teaching. Yeah, it's very rudimentary, but it works for me.
Well, basically, my brain is not as organized as Irina's brain. I really need something to procrastinate on, and this complexity it just makes me feel better because I'm doing some other things, not only just writing down the list, because it feels very boring for me. So I don't know, I find it very helpful to do that. So thanks for mentioning that and giving me the opportunity to show off. Yeah, so the last section in my CV is references. Basically, as far as I know, you need to include 2 recent referees underneath this section. Is it true?
I do see it on some CVs and I don't see it on some CVs as well. So I don't think it's a hard requirement. Usually when you apply for jobs, there is a specific section where you're asked to provide references, and usually it's good practice to actually ask those people whether they would be willing to provide a reference.
So that was my PhD CV, and now we're going into the postdoc CV. I made it in Overleaf. If you do not know, this is a website where you can code a document. They had like very nice templates, so I just steal one and made my own. So here we can see CV that I've made for my future postdoc positions. On the top I put my name and my current job title. I'm a PhD student, and then I also made hyperlinks to all of the things that are relevant for the job search. So my email, phone, the location of my office, LinkedIn profile, Twitter, and YouTube. So basically people can just click on this text and go straight to my YouTube or Twitter or whatever. Next I have objective, and as you told me, it's not really the thing that's supposed to be.
I think for this particular workshop it's fine to leave this in. I think it doesn't really hurt.
In the education section, I left my bachelor project and bachelor degree and added my ongoing PhD project and the name of the project itself.
I think in the dates part, I would put as well the year of expected graduation. I think that's what people commonly do. And what you can also think about is maybe linking the names of your current PhD supervisors, because this might help you gain visibility, and within the field of microbiology, people probably know your supervisors, then they will be able to place you a little bit better in the world where you're in.
So next I have my laboratory skills section. Here I put all of the research techniques I've learned during my PhD, during my bachelor degree, and its skills in microbiology, molecular biology, and biochemistry, because basically I am planning to apply for positions that in this field.
Well, I'm not really able to comment on these because I'm not a microbiologist, but it looks cool.
Thank you. Let's go to the next section. So next I have research experience, and here I put my PhD project and other 2 sites project which I did during my bachelor's.
Yeah, I think it looks good. You do list different things that you have done in each position, so you might want to rethink how you phrase what you've done and use active verbs just to indicate what you have done, what you have achieved, and so on.
In the next section I have my work experience, and here I listed all of the companies I worked for, including the one I worked for like only 2 months, because I really wanted to make my CV 3 pages long, and yeah, that was the exact size. Again, I mentioned all of the things that I did there. It's not much because I'm applying for academia, and I don't really think that they've been looking to the skills which I learned during my work experience, because everything I have now, all the techniques are connected to my research project. So I really don't think people will be looking at this work experience section that I've got in industry.
Well, I still think that this is very relevant, because I mean, at least with my non-microbiology brain, I would still put it in for sure. It just shows other types of experiences that you had, and maybe I would list it as industry work experience just to make it clear that it's distinct from research experience. And again, I think with the language and how you describe your responsibilities, generally you would use past tense. So I did this, this is, and try to be consistent. I think it just reads a little bit better and nicer when you use consistent language throughout your whole CV.
And the next section is conference presentations. Basically, I gave lots of oral talks while I was in Russia with my bachelor project, but I think that it's not that relevant anymore because it was like 8 to 10 years ago, and I put only like most of the conferences here are the ones that I gave in the United Kingdom with my current PhD project, and I mentioned only 2 conferences which I was presenting in Russia. What do you think? Shall I include more?
I would still list them. I don't think there's any harm, and I think it's a pretty impressive list if you ask me. And it certainly demonstrates that the further along you are, the more you're presenting, and demonstrates the dynamic. What you could consider doing here, but maybe it's just personal preference, is also separated by year, and you might think about maybe adding the title of your talks as well.
Actually, I think that after conference presentations supposed to be the publication list, and I haven't published anything yet, so yeah, I don't really know where to put it when I will publish something. How do you think?
Well, I think publications are bread and butter in academia, so they should definitely come as close to the top as possible. So ideally you want to put them before conference presentations and after your work experience.
And the next section I have here, which comes after my conference presentations, is honors and awards. Here in the United Kingdom I got only 1 award, which is about my teaching experience.
Yeah, I think it looks good. I mean, I don't have that section in my CV because I actually haven't received any awards, so well done.
Thank you.
If I look at this section, it lacks a bit of detail, so I don't know exactly what these are about. I would maybe just add a little bit more explanation about what these awards were and where they were given, which university, etc., just to make it a bit more specific.
So the next I have funding and membership section, where I put all of the grants that I won. It's not much. Basically, all of the grants that I got are for travels to the conferences or for paying the fees for the conference. I also mentioned that I'm a member of one of the societies which are related to my field.
Well, I actually have quite a lot to say about this section. So first, I would separate these into 2 because they're not very closely related. And I would put funding first, and I would actually put funding maybe above awards, because at the end of the day, again, funding and ability to attract funding is very, very important the more you progress in your academic career. And actually, I think it's very impressive that you've been able to get this funding already now. I certainly didn't have any grants except for one during my PhD. My second comment is also be more specific. So you mentioned conference grant, but mention what is this for? So to attend a specific conference, I presume. So just mention conference grant to attend this and this conference. And I think there is something that you actually haven't put in here. It's your scholarship that you won to fund your PhD.
Oh yeah, that's actually lots of money. yeah, I completely forgot about that.
And I would actually mention it a couple of times, maybe when you list your PhD position in your education, so funded by the funder that funded you. And also on the funding section, put the name of the scheme, the duration of your PhD, and also the amount of funding that you have, that they're giving you. Because I think that's very, very good to have on your CV.
And then I have a teaching experience section, and this teaching experience I got only during my PhD. So basically I was demonstrating for different practicals in my department, and also my supervisor gave me like 3 undergraduate students, and we did their final project together. So I was like kind of manager of this project, and I put all of those experience into this section.
Well, this is a very important section for an academic CV. Even if you are primarily research funded, you're a researcher, it's still very important to demonstrate that you are participating in teaching. If I look at this section, I would just maybe make it a bit more specific. Maybe mention which programs those students were studying, and highlight a bit more what your role was. So for example, for me, I don't really know what a demonstrator does. Maybe it's very common, within your field.
Yeah, basically it's a teaching assistant. Yeah, maybe I need to rephrase it.
Yeah, I think teaching assistant is a bit more of a universal term that's more familiar everywhere. And you can also mention the size of the groups that you are demonstrating to. Yeah. I think that's quite important as well.
And I actually also had experience in content creation, kind of this stuff. I did video editing for one of the workshop that was recorded for my university, for my department, but I wasn't sure where shall I put it. Is it something that I should mention? Because like in the future, I really don't mind if my next university where I will be working as a postdoc will give me some side job, so I can get like more money.
Они еще не заплатят за это, к сожалению.
В смысле?
Yeah, I think you can make a section, maybe extracurricular activities, or maybe again impact or engagement, to list all the other things that you did. And I also know that you were involved in organizing conferences and workshops. So I think again this is something that you should put in your CV as well.
Yeah, I actually was like trying to make this CV one day before the deadline, so it was a little bit rushed and I forgot everything, like some stuff that I did. So that's good that you reminded me, and I can put more into this postdoc CV.
Yeah, again, that just highlights the importance of keeping track of everything you do. And you might think this is actually nothing, but every time you agree to participate or help organize something, help somebody, make a note of that, because you can always use it, maybe not to put on your CV, but use it as an example, for example, in a job interview. Like if you help somebody in your team with a project, this could be an example of how you work in a team, or what kind of person you are as a colleague. So just try to make a note and just be a bit more aware of what you're doing, why you're doing this, and what skills this helps you train.
And the last section of my CV is references. So basically 2 references is like the golden standard. I mentioned my supervisor of my PhD project, and I mentioned my supervisor of my bachelor project there. So that was it about my CV for the postdoc position. I really hope that I will be successful, especially with the advice Irina gave us. So now let's have a look into Irina's CV that she made recently for her job hunting in academia. Yeah, can you please take us through your whole CV?
Yeah, well, just as a side note, I'm not necessarily actively job hunting, but I think for all of us, it's quite important to keep an eye out and also keep your CV up to date. And if you do have some new experience, a new publication, new presentation, just make sure you add it in, because it's quite easy to forget it. So let's have a look. Again, I'm starting with the title, my name, my position, and contact details, nothing extra. The next section is education, so I just mentioned my bachelor, master's, and PhD with the year of completion. The next section is career summary. So in this section, I list all my experiences in chronological orders, starting from the most recent one, so my current position at the University of Birmingham. And I also added my responsibilities in each of these roles as well. And for example, the projects that I was involved in, I also hyperlinked them, so if people were interested, they could click and have a look. The next section is grants or funding. So here I listed all the projects that I received funding for. So you just basically put the title of your project, the funder, as well as your role in this application. So for example, the most recent grant that I received, I was actually the PI, and I led the whole application. But even if you were a co-applicant, that's also fine. Just make sure you mention it and mention the amount and the year. My next section is publications. So here I listed all my peer-reviewed publications, and I also highlighted myself in the list of co-authors, just so people could see. And I list all the publications in chronological order started from the most recent ones. In our field, sometimes it happens so that you're listed on a paper as part of the study team. So you're maybe not necessarily involved in writing the paper very actively, but you were involved in the overall project and you are listed as part of the study team. So this is something you can list on your CV as well, just why not? The next section refers to discussion papers. This might be something very specific to the field of health economics. I'm not particularly sure. So in our field, it's very common to have a discussion group style conferences in which you submit your paper, which is not yet published, but is nearly ready. And you actually submit the whole paper. And if it is accepted, when you come to the conference, it is being discussed, presented and discussed by another academic. And you can see it as the first round of peer review pre-publication. And you can't really list this in conference presentations because you didn't present it yourself, but you can list it as a discussion paper. I also have a section on non-peer reviewed publications. So for example, here I have a couple of articles that were published on the university website. So they're kind of semi-academic related to the research that I do, but they're not peer-reviewed. And I also linked my doctoral thesis here as well. Then we go on to other research outputs. I start with a section on invited talks. So for example, if you participate in seminars, this is where you can list them. And you can list the title, the date, and where you gave this talk. And also the more you progress in your career, the more you'll be invited to give those presentations. And I think many departments also organize department seminars. For example, if you present your work in a department seminar, you can also list it here. And sometimes you can also invite someone external to present in your department. And this could be a way of developing your network, and maybe also of sort of having the opportunity to be invited yourself to that university to sort of repay the paper. So the next section is conference presentations. So here they are listed in chronological order as well, starting from the most recent one. And actually, I think just for the sake of space, I didn't list whether it was oral or poster. But obviously you can expand, you can add the title, whether it was a poster or an oral presentation, etc. The next section is impact. And again, the more you progress in your career, the more important impact becomes. And universities look at it quite closely when it comes to cases for promotion. So it's very important to think whether something that you've done potentially can be listed as impact. So here, for instance, I contributed to some evidence reviews, organized different workshops, participated in different events. So all of this can be listed in this section. The next section relates to teaching. I mainly held two longer term positions in two different universities, so I listed all my teaching responsibilities by university, and you can provide different examples of the things that you did, if you delivered lectures, if you supervised dissertations, coordinated modules, everything you've done, put it there. And also in this teaching section, I added a part on the teaching courses that I have done to demonstrate that I've done some development as an educator. So we now go on to citizenship section, and this can be seen as some extracurricular activities that you do in addition to your main role within university. So for example, if you're a part of any special interest groups, any committees, so here, for example, I have listed professional membership, peer review activities, different roles within the university. So for example, I'm part of the mentoring scheme, and I mentor postgraduate students within our college. And I did some other roles as well in my previous position. So essentially in this section, you want to demonstrate that you're a good citizen, that you actively participate in the academic community, for example, by doing peer reviews for journals, fulfilling all sorts of roles. And this can also be partially seen as administration, as leadership, management, and this sort of highlights the importance of saying yes to different opportunities. I think usually in every university there are so many different schemes that you can be part of. And I think if you want to develop your academic CV and if you want to develop your experience, it's a good idea to say yes to those opportunities, to gain the experience and to list this on your CV as well. And finally, we have a section on professional development, and here I just listed the courses that I've done in the past few years that are related to either my projects, so for example statistics, or grant writing, career coaching, etc. So if you have done any courses, it's also a good idea to put them in here. And another thing that is important to highlight is that your CV might look slightly differently depending on your field. But generally, I think the advice is not to compare yourself too much. Only compare yourself to people maybe who are in very similar position. And to develop your CV, keep track of all the things that you're doing. A lot of this counts, and also try to say yes to as many things as you can to gain that valuable experience and to present it on your CV.
Yeah, that's a great summary of our video. Thank you very much, Irina, for taking part and being my guest on the channel.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you. I really hope that I will invite you more and we will make more videos together, for example, about cover letter, about interviews and other related stuff. So if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. There will be much more videos about this topic, about academia. And if you have any questions that you want us to discuss on this channel, please leave a comment down below. We will be reading all of them, and I will try to reply to as many as possible. And thank you very much for your time.
Good luck with your job search. Bye bye.
Bye bye.